Hey, if you're a Led Zeppelin fan, I think you're going to enjoy what I have for you here today. On November 26th of 1982, Led Zeppelin put out this album, CODA. And this basically was kind of the mark of the end. I mean, the band had broken up a couple years earlier, but then here they were in 1982, and Jimmy Page, they released a bunch of things that things that they'd recorded over the years, and then just put them on this album, which then just kind of wrapped everything up. And what I have here for you is it basically is a record review of this album that was published on February 13th of 1983. So that would have been just a few months after this came out. And this is kind of an interesting album, again, because it is a compilation and it spans this wide period of time. I think it has some really, really amazing high points in it, even though it was really kind of just leftover stuff. But I'll just show you, if you haven't seen it before, the cover is pretty neat because this is all, it's hard to tell on the camera. There's really no way for me to show it just because of the colors. You can't really tell, but this is all embossed. So if you've never had the vinyl, all of this stuff is raised, which is kind of cool because Led Zeppelin always had really cool album art. And then when you open it up, a bunch of just classic, just awesome Zeppelin pictures just over the years. I mean, these were just such a cool collection of just images, from the beginning all the way to when they broke up. And then on the back, just similar to the front of the album, and the texture of this, the paper they used also. I love this stuff. I love vinyl, not just because of the sound, but because of the presentation. It added to the experience of the art. It wasn't just the art, wasn't just the music. It was the whole experience of the vinyl, the going to the store and buying it and the physical part of it and the smell, all that stuff was so great. And then even just kind of the texture of the paper on these things was just all part of the experience. And the album itself had some really, really cool stuff on it. I mean, We're Gonna Groove was an old Benny King song, and I'll be honest with you, it's amazing. It just rocks on this album. It is so cool. Poor Tom is actually from 1970. It's kind of from the Led Zeppelin 3 era, and when you listen to it, it sounds like Led Zeppelin 3. It's got the acoustic guitar that kicks in, and Bonham has this really cool shuffle on his snare that he does through the song, and then the harmonica in it. It's really, really cool. I Can't Quit You Baby, of course, was on Led Zeppelin 1, but this, in my opinion, my personal opinion, is a superior version of the song. This one gets me more than the one on Led Zeppelin 1 did. I love the I Can't Quit You Baby version on this tune. It's just powerful. Walter's Walk is one that came from the Houses of the Holy sessions, and it similarly, it sounds a little bit like Houses of the Holy. His Robert Plant's voice, the kind of things he does with it, it's just reminiscent of that period. And then the side B, side 2, these things, the Ozone Baby, Darlene, and Wearing and Tearing, are just outtakes from the In Through the Outdoor period. And then Bonzo's, which they were recorded, I think, in 78. And then Bonzo's Montreux, which is basically just a drum solo. That's from 1976. And it's probably over all the years, I've listened to that as much as I've listened to anything on this album. I actually really, really like that. And because they did some things with it that it makes some of the drum parts sound like steel drums. It's really cool. I think that it's so cool what they did with this little drum solo. And anyway, it really, in the end, interestingly enough, is a really strong album. And first of all, before I read this to you, I'd love to get your feedback on it. Is this one that you bust out very often? Again, for me, there's actually some really, really good stuff on here that I'll go out of my way to listen to, especially that, like I said, that I Can't Quit You Baby. This version here is just top shelf. It's so good. It's so powerful. The way Robert Plant starts it out, his voice to me sounds so much more powerful and thick and amazing, more than it does on the version that's on Led Zeppelin 1. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to read this to you. Again, this is from February 13th, 1983, and I think you'll find this interesting, this guy's take on it. So the title is Led Zeppelin's musical epitaph contains all new songs, which is actually just an interesting thing to note in and of itself, because, you know, a lot of bands, after they break up and they kind of move on, they'll come out for contractual reasons or whatever, they need to put another album out, they'll put a best of album out. And that's not what they did here. Of course, I Can't Quit You Baby already existed, but that's not really what this is. This is, and it's also not the same recording. A lot of bands will put out a best of and it's just all the stuff that you already own. Even though that's already on an album, this is a whole new kind of version of it. So it's pretty cool what they did. Okay, so check this out. When Swan Song Records announced that Led Zeppelin would no longer record or tour as a band because of the loss of drummer John Bonham, it was assumed that there would be no further music from the original pioneers of heavy metal music. But group guitarist-producer Jimmy Page brought an end to this silence with the release of CODA, a musical epitaph of group history in song. As with most records that chronicle groups' end, CODA proceeds chronologically, but with a different twist. This twist manifests itself in the noticeable absence of any familiar material. There's no song on this album that has heretofore appeared on any previous Led Zeppelin album. Well, sort of. We've already qualified that. For any other group, this might have been as fatal as what initially caused their demise, but for Led Zeppelin, the music that producer Jimmy Page chose is perfect. The first side of CODA deals primarily with the first 3 years of their musical career. Side 1 begins with an old R&B standard, Benny King's We're Gonna Groove, which, by the way, again, is so amazing. I think it's so great on here. This seems all too appropriate considering the strong leanings that Jimmy Page has always had toward R&B and blues. And the version which Page, Plant, and Company turn out here is nothing but spirited with the searing guitar of Jimmy Page and the equally riveting drum work of John Bonham, leaving the listener pleasantly exhausted. Side 1 continues with 3 more tunes of similar bass musical distinction. Willie Dixon's I Can't Quit You Baby, and 2 original songs, Poor Tom and Walter's Walk. Each of these showcase the musical influence of rhythm and blues that Led Zeppelin juxtaposed to their patented, quote, heavy metal din of melodic battle. Of the 3 remaining songs on side 1, it is Willie Dixon's I Can't Quit You Baby that best brings to light the sometimes soulful whine of Robert Plant's vocals. Here, Plant's crooning is almost reminiscent of Janis Joplin's equally soulful approach to the blues. Again, yes, it's so powerful on here. It's amazing. Side 2 continues the chronological countdown in the final years of Led Zeppelin's career. The period that Jimmy Page chose to illustrate here stretches only 2 years, 1976 through 1978. In listening to each of Side 2's 4 songs, it is hard to understand why none of this material ever appeared on a previous album. Each song clearly defines what the music of Led Zeppelin was all about. Brilliant guitar, strong rhythm, powerful drumming, and classic rock vocals. Ozone Baby, Darlene, and Wearing and Tearing each epitomize what was best about the kind of music Led Zeppelin consistently produced in their heyday, good, hard-driving rock and roll. I personally, Wearing and Tearing is the weak spot. It's an intense song. Robert Plant is more guttural, screamy in that one than on most other Zeppelin stuff. I mean, it's really, really in your face, intense stuff. I didn't love that one. Just anyway, for what it's worth, to me, that one, I see why. I don't know. I just didn't care much for that one. The third track of Side 2 is rather experimental for an album of this sort, but still refreshing enough not to drown the classic beauty of the music already present with overblown obscurity. Bonzo's Montreux, a hefty drum solo by late drummer John Bonham, serves as a befitting testament to this man's ability to not only maintain a strong rhythm, but also keep the listener's attention with cleverly orchestrated touches of percussive innovation, and he puts in parentheses drum orchestra. As an epitaph, this album could have been a depressing collection of well work, heard much too often, repetitive junk known all too frequently as so-and-so's greatest hits. but instead, the always fascinating studio genius of Jimmy Page has shown what his group, Led Zeppelin, did best: play consistently good music. And that's the end of the article. And I'd really love to get your feedback. First of all, am I all wrong in not really caring much for that song? Again, like I said, that one, by the time the song gets to the end, it's kind of chaotic, and I don't know. That didn't do much for me. But I mean, even a drum solo, which I won't really often go out of my way just to listen to a drum solo, that one I will. And again, I've listened to that probably hundreds of times in my life. I liked that so much, what he did in that piece. When they broke up, I wasn't paying attention. It was 1980. I was a kid. And so by the time this came out, I was just barely starting to pay attention to music. And I remember this one was just kind of always like, meh. At least that's the way it came across the people that I knew back then. You know, we were all 14-year-old kids, 13-year-olds, and we're buying this stuff and learning about it. But over the years, this one is really kind of, it's grown to the point where I go, yeah, that was a really, really good offering. I mean, it really did have some great stuff on it, and it's a solid album. I think a lot of bands would be happy if this was one of their main albums, not just their leftovers. And it ended up being a really, really cool thing. Anyway, I'd love to get your feedback on what your favorite tracks were, what you thought of this whole thing, and ultimately how this compared to all the stuff that they released over the years, all the albums that they put out during the course of their career. I'd love to get your feedback on that. And of course, please, if you're not already, follow the channel, like the video. And if you know any other people that like Led Zeppelin, they'd probably be interested in hearing this stuff. So please share the video with other people. And as always, with that, have yourself a fantastic day.